Okay, very good. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're the meeting of the Kingston Police Services Board, meeting number 2305, being held on Thursday, March 23rd, 2023 at noon. Okay, is there a presentation that is going to happen? No? Okay, so we're going to do a disclosure of a conflict of interest. Nobody? Good. Can I get an approval of the agenda? Thank you, Gail. Jimmy, great. All in favor? Okay. And then the adoption of the minutes from meeting 2304 on February 16, 2023 be adopted. Thank you, Jimmy. Gail, very good. Gail, you're going to get a workout today. Okay, and then all in favor. Thank you. Communications. If the following communications from the Ministry of the Solicitor General, the Ontario Association of Police Services Board, Canadian Association of Police Governance, and the Office of the City Clerk be received. Anyone? Gail? Jimmy?
No, you're all good.
Good. Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Good. Chair, I'm going to ask if anyone has questions with respect to the following communications.
Nope.
No. Okay. So we have information reports. I'll ask for a motion. The following reports be received for information purposes. Thank you, Jimmy. Gail, all in favor? Thank you. And then I'll ask Acting Chief Fraser if you'd like to speak to any of the reports below.
Certainly, what I'd like to do is report number 23-12, which is property evidence and annual audit report. Sergeant Scott Huffman, who works in our professional standards branch, is the person who conducted the audit. So we have the brief report here. He's going to speak to it briefly. So if I could introduce Sergeant Scott Huffman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. The long-awaited, much-anticipated property report that everyone has been dying to hear about. I will be brief, as the chief said. Part of one of my duties outside of professional standards is that I work in quality assurance as well, a portion of my time. And each year, the quality assurance department is asked to examine our property and evidence control. The purpose of this audit that we do is to examine the collection and preservation and control of evidence, and then see and make sure that preservation of evidence and collection of it fits with the legislation and our general orders and guidelines for it. Brief overview of the method is just a physical examination of the facilities themselves to check for issues with security and adequacy of the facilities to make sure that they fit the needs that we have for them. And then we do a sampling of evidence to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be, and that the procedures are followed and that everything can be found easily. And then kind of the final piece of it is just some interviews of the property clerks themselves and the managers that are in charge of that area, just to see if they have any thoughts or ideas or comments on how things are operating. We won't delve too deeply into the details of all of that. It's about 2 days worth of sifting through property and looking through all the various rooms to see where things are at. We may just skip right through to the results and the conclusion of it. That being that the property that everything that we collect and everything that we preserve was done so efficiently, effectively, and economically. And that everything was in compliance with the legislation and general orders and policies that govern the collection and preservation of evidence. That's the gist of it, really. Everything seems to be operating smoothly in there. Last year when we met, we had 2 relatively new property clerks. They seem to have taken to the job well. And Allison Watt is the sergeant in charge of the property unit, and she has things very well in hand. She's a very organized person, and that seems to show in her work and in our collection and preservation of evidence.
Thank you, Scott. And I know it's a tedious job. It has to be done on a yearly basis, so I appreciate you getting it done. Barring any questions from anyone, I would move on to the next report. Not seeing any. All right. Report number 2313, just in relation to our Missing Persons Act. We're required each year to submit when we've done any emergency kind of accessing of information. Generally under this act, we have in certain circumstances, we can do emergency situation or emergency, let's just say activations where we can gather information. And literally we can either obtain a court order, we can obtain a search warrant, or there's sometimes we can make an urgent demand. So in this particular case, we did have 4 situations where we did make urgent demands. They're outlined in the missing person report and have been reported accordingly to the province. So it's our obligation to report those, and they're all done and reported to the province. And that's all I can really say about those.
Okay.
If there's any question of that. And thanks again, Scott, for your report on the evidence and property room. Much appreciated.
The St. Patrick's report is on that as well. It was on the addendum.
Oh,
It's the next report.
Okay. Certainly, and I know Inspector Funnell was certainly the event commander the day of St. Patrick's, along with a number of other people. We had different incident commanders each day, but Inspector Funnell is away on vacation right now, so I just had him do a written report, or he would have been the presentation this morning based on his what he observed during St. Patrick's Day. So as you can see, the report is there for you. It outlines a little bit from last year, some comparisons from last year, and then what took place this year. Obviously, the events took place over 2 days, St. Patrick's Day being the 17th, which is a weekday, and then the students voted to actually do the partying on the 18th. So it didn't interfere with their schoolwork or anything during the week. So it turned into 2 days of festivities. The weather wasn't the greatest on the Friday, so that kind of hampered it a little bit. We did have certainly some moments when obviously many students came out and took over Aberdeen Street. It was all handled effectively on the 17th. The 18th, we were met by just probably somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 students. Once again, it was met effectively and efficiently with our staffing that we had resourced. We're happy to report that certainly during the event that there was no serious injuries. There was no serious property damage. There was a number of arrests that were made. And once again, there's more detail in the report for you to read there. But when we get down to the enforcement totals, obviously we laid 367 Liquor License and Control Act offenses, 5 under the Highway Traffic Act. We had 5 amps. We made 8 arrests and 1 criminal code arrest. And as the pictures show, there was people hanging off of a car. We've got photos in there just showing when the green smoke bomb was let off, the aftermath of the street, what it looks like after. And, my hat's off to our planners, our organizers who put this together over weeks and weeks leading up to the event of St. Patrick's. And then we'll get right back to starting for September move-in. Then it'll be for homecoming, fake homecoming, where we'll be doing the same thing. Certainly some positives that did come out of it, our liaison team, which we kind of ramped up a little bit at the end of last year. They were out in advance of St. Patrick's with our messaging, meeting with students on Queen's property, getting messaging through the media, and it really has changed the attitude of the students towards police. I was down on the ground on Saturday amongst all of our officers, and the students were not in an agitated state. They were there, they were friendly, they were celebratory, and that's that's a lot better than being met with items being thrown, etc. So we did have a little bit of a different model this year in the fact that we had an enforcement strategy that was following the liaison team messaging strategy. So students knew that if they did A, the response would be A. If they did B, the response would be B. So that worked out really well. We did have a public order unit in to assist us, because obviously we can't staff a crowd that large without crowd management. So we had the OPP assisting us in that regard. And it worked out very well this year with our enforcement strategy. As generally what happens is once the students take the street, they occupy it for a period of time, and then we try and push them out of the way and get them off the street. So we have literally a big line of police officers that push everybody down the street. So this year they knew there was going to be enforcement. So once the street was declared a nuisance party, the enforcement began. And we didn't have to do a push this year because the students all took off when the enforcement began. So certainly that's a positive event. Obviously, they did take over the street. There is thousands of them that come out. We've got in the report, you'll see some outlines with, a message that just says Aberdeen Street, 1 p.m. So obviously well organized, well thought out, but in the end, no injuries, no property damage. And I'm happy to report that it was a success in our eyes. And, at the end of the day, I think it goes all back to the messaging. So to all our people who came in on their days off and had to work, I thank them. And certainly the community was patient this year as well. And I think everybody working together is the key to solve this, because, we can't police our way out of it, as you'll hear me say repeatedly. We need the entire community to come together. And unfortunately, like we said, what used to be St. Patrick's Day 1 day is now 2 days. Homecoming used to be 1 day, now it's 2 days. Fake homecoming can be up to 2 days. The move-in weekend is an entire weekend. And then every weekend that follows sees the taxpayer of Kingston and the Kingston police having to upstaff our policing. We can't sustain it. We don't have the bodies. The taxpayers don't want to pay it. And there has to be a different system, and we're together. I think we can work through it, and certainly we're developing new strategies as we move forward.
Very good.
Take any questions on that as well.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. It's not the question, it's basically comments. Thank you very much, Acting Chief Fraser, for your leadership. And I think I heard a lot of positive things as well this year from about the party and handling the crowd, and we didn't see much out there in the media as well. There was some people hanging on the trees and a little crowd here and there, but I think all of you and your team, congratulations, but doing a great job. But how do you feel now after using this strategy you put together and the way of work to handling the crowd? How confident you are now for that we're going to have similar tactics or similar plan to handle the homecoming?
Yep. Great question, Jimmy. And really all accolades go to the people in this organization for coming up with the ideas. I essentially put out, hey, if we can do this differently, how would we do it? A number of people came forward with ideas during the planning stage, like the enforcement initiative. And I think what we're doing right now, as opposed to just heading into it and then kind of saying, hey, who's all available and let's put every resource we can to it. We're coming up with a base plan, with a base model. This was certainly successful, and it was really successful because of all the messaging that our liaison team did. But I really think, it's going to take this year, but I really think this was the start of how we can literally say, here's how much we're going to spend for these events. In particular, if we can reduce our involvement every weekend of September and October, we are upstaffing 20 people each weekend just to offset all the calls for service. If we can offset those expenses and only look at the major events, in particular, if this was only 1 day, it would be great, but we know depending what day of the week it falls on, it turns into 2. But we have a plan. And I think moving forward, it's a template that our organizers will be using again. And I'm very confident that we won't see the expense that we had last year, this year.
Wonderful. Good to know. And what was the feedback from the team and the membership? Especially for Mr. Funnel and his team. What was the feedback from them?
Certainly from our incident commanders and our event commanders, it couldn't have went off any better. Like I said, no injuries. We were methodical in our actions using the public order unit of the OPP, who are crowd management experts. They're analyzing the crowd at every move. And that's what's giving us our authority to make any actions. So we were very, very happy with the result. And as I always say, when you put the right people in the right places, the right things get done. And in this particular case, the organizers, Scott Huffman, who's on here with us, along with Sergeant Clem Nasanyagam, who really put the matrix together, and then our entire management team who goes every Wednesday, weeks leading into the event. We're happy, and I think this is definitely a model for future events for us. We had the right amount of officers to deal with the right amount of the crowd, and I wouldn't say it was overkill, and I wouldn't say it was under-policed. So we've got a happy medium there. Does it cost money? It sure does, and I wish we didn't have to spend it, but we have to. There's an obligation on us to be there, but I think we found an efficient way to do it. So my hat's off to this entire organization for what they did that day, because that's who makes the difference. The positive attitude going out, and messaging was met with enforcement, just like we said it would be. So everyone knows, we know what's going to happen and they know what's going to happen.
Wonderful. Well, please convey my gratitude and thanks to all the team and all of you. Thank you for doing a great job.
Thanks, Jim.
Anybody else? Okay, good. Jimmy Spax speaks on behalf of the board when he says good job
Thank you.
to everyone. Thank you. Next, we're going to do some motions for a couple new hires. So the Kingston Police Services Board appoint Dylan Fawcett and David Perron as officers of the Kingston Police effective March 27th, 2023. First or seconder, Gail, thank you. Jimmy, good. All in favor? Thank you. And
It's only me and Gail today, so we're gonna.
that's why I said you're going to get a good workout. You might want to switch arms every now and then, you know. Then we're going to get a motion for the sponsorship for the OAPSB Spring Conference, that the Kingston Police Services Board contribute $500 to the 2023 OAPSB Spring Conference and AGM.
We do this every year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Jimmy, Gail, thank you. So it's informative for us as well.
Okay.
So, and then motion Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement, Next Generation 911, that the Kingston Police Service Board enter into an Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement between His Majesty the King and the right of Ontario as represented by the Solicitor General and the Kingston Police Services Board with respect to the Next Generation 911, NG 911, communication system effective April 1st, 2022. That the board authorize the chair or the delegate to execute and said agreement on the behalf of the board. Gail, thank you. Jimmy, thank you. All in favor? Very good. Okay. And then the 2023 OAPSB Spring Conference, May 30th to June 1st in Niagara Falls. That we board approves the request from the board secretary to attend the 2023 OAPSB Spring Conference, and that the board approves the request from Christian Lupert to attend the 2023 OAPSB Spring Conference for one day, namely May 31st, 2023. Thank you, Gail. Jimmy, thanks. All in favor? Very good. And then the CAPG conference, August 14th to 19th in St. John's, Newfoundland. That the board approve the request of Gail McAllister to attend the CAPG conference. That, I guess, Christian, can you say yes?
Jared, you can.
I can. Okay, good.
Yep.
That's good. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. Law of Policing Conference, November 8th to 9th in Vancouver, BC. The chair calls for a motion that the board approves the request from Christian Lupert to attend the Law of Policing Conference. Thank you. Jimmy, Gail, all in favor? Thank you. And then I'm gonna ask for, there's a request to remove background check fee for volunteers of not-for-profit agencies. In order, there has to be a seconder for Jimmy to be able to present to the board. Gail, thank you. Then I'm gonna pass it over to, maybe I'll just read through it here first. Whereas not-for-profit organizations are incredibly important to help residents and those in need with the city of Kingston community, and they provide necessary services to vulnerable populations which are embedded in empathy and compassion. Whereas the pandemic and increased inflation has had a negative effect on many people within our community, and financial hardships that have strained on the resources that not-for-profit organizations need in order to serve the community. Where actually, Jimmy, I'm probably stealing your thunder here. Do you want to talk about
It's okay. No, that's all right. It's all good. So I was connected by a few organizations who going through the hardship through this unprecedented time of the pandemic, and some of the big organization and some of the small. The smallest one has a little bit more hardship due to the finance and inflation and all the other people's, but also being a volunteer myself, I believe in giving back to the community strongly. And all those people who volunteer their time and make the efforts to go on the different places and provide the services the community in need, we shouldn't have extra burden on them to pay for their background check too. So I thought this is a great idea, and I'm in the favor of this. So we should allow all those people to get the background, which is again is the safety of the community, or due to the safety of the those vulnerable population. These people need to check their background, and that's why I'm requesting the police board to please allow the volunteers to have the background check without any financial cost to it. And some of the organization, they claim that they pay for the volunteers, but some of the volunteers also part of the vulnerable community, but they want to give back because they was there once. Now they are on their own feet and they are able to give back, but they don't have enough source of income to pay extra cost of these things. So that will be a really a great idea, and I will really appreciate behalf of all those organizations and the people who try to give back to the community through the different organization, if they have that privilege to not pay for their background check.
Okay. I think what's going to happen is, because we're missing one of the board members today and who's not present, the mayor, we'll go through this. I'm going to delay this till next meeting.
I talked to him and he say he just don't have to be there, but he support that. He told me that personally, but if he's okay, if you want to move to the next meeting, that's fine.
I think just to have all of us in on the conversation,
Okay.
and let's do that. I'll put that to next month.
Sure, no
Okay,
problem.
thank you.
We'll need a mover and a seconder to defer it to next meeting.
Jimmy, Gail, all in favor?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Excuse me.
Sorry, go ahead, Lori.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. In relation to the next item being the strategic plan, I just sent out through the chat an amended motion that would read that the final draft Kingston plan, and that once finalized, it be published.
Okay.
So there's just a slight amendment since we have found the couple of typos in it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And but we can have a motion to accept it. Yes. Okay. So that's what we'll do for the Kingston Police strategic plan for 2023 to 2026. The Kingston Police Services Board approves the final draft of the Kingston Police strategic plan, and then it'll be published after the finalization. Can we get a first and a seconder? Okay, Gail, good. Jimmy, all in favor. And I just want to do a shout out. the almost finished product, other than a couple just typos. Turned out really, really well, I think. And just shout out to like Fred Costigan, who did work on it, Lori and Scott and everyone involved. Great work, really good work. Okay, new business, staffing update. The Kingston Police Services Board congratulates Sergeant Greg Sands on his promotion to the rank of inspector effective January 1st, 2023. Very good. And then for committees, I'm going to ask for volunteers to the following committees. So budget, I would ask Jimmy if you can join me on budget.
Sure.
Okay, very good. Policy and bylaws, Gail, I couldn't think of anyone better. Does anyone else want to participate with Gail? Okay, Gail, you and I. All right. Human resources. I think that anyone?
I
Lori
can do
and I? Oh, Jimmy. Okay, very good.
It's okay if Lori's available, that's all right. I have too many anyway, so I,
Well, yeah, that's all good. Okay, we're putting it out there.
okay.
Sure, I'm happy to take that.
Okay, very good. Christian. Okay. Jimmy, you got
No,
some
that's
time
fine.
back. You got some time back. It's okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Christian. And then we're going to do addendum item, and that I'm just going to ask for a moment of silence for the tragic shooting deaths of the two Edmonton officers, Brett Ryan and Travis Jordan, that passed on March 16th, 2023.
Deze oproep werd onderbroken. Cet appel a été interrompu. Diese Anruf wurde unterbrochen. This call was interrupted.
Anything we should be worried about, Lori? No? Oh, Christian. Must be Christian. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay. The chair asks if there's is there any new business that anyone would like to talk about? No? Okay. Then,
Mr. Chair, I have a question before we move. I know it's appropriate for me to ask or not. But can I ask? Even if not, then you can tell me no to it. So I have been lately getting a lot of emails and complaints about the issue. And I think Acting Chief Scott is reply one of those emails. But I'm getting right now every day 1 or 2 email, the crisis or the increasing violence of increasing violence at the mall area, Katraki Mall area, and behind that Lions Civic Garden area. And is that something I can ask particularly, meet personally with Scott as a counselor?
I think is that an ongoing investigation?
No, it's no investigation on there. It's just increasing presence of the drugs users and the mentally challenged people, and making a mess in the people living around the area. They're feeling unsafe. And I know the police department has been working along with the many other community partners with the transit and with the mall, but it's not getting better. It's getting worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
And it should not started just 6 months ago or 5 months ago. It's from, since I know it's 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And it's growing, and people are really getting scared and feeling unsafe. Now is a lot of population is the seniors up there. We have apartment building and people living in the other side of the building. I know it's not only the police issue. It is something the city has to come up with, but I'm willing to fight with it. But I just want to ask Chief Fraser to if he can update something, if he knows anything, what's going on in the background.
No, for sure. And thank you for that. Yeah, we've got a lot of issues that are going on there, and we've certainly been doing our share of enforcement. It can always be improved and increase the enforcement. The issue we're having, as you can see across Canada, there's calls from pretty well every province about bail reform. And so what is happening is, what we do is we go in and lay charges, and then we use the law to assist us by putting area restrictions on people. So when we lay a charge, as recently there was an assault, we got a lot of tips from the community, and thanks to the community for that. We made a number of arrests in that case. Then we released them on conditions that they can't be in that area. And so if we find them in that area, they get arrested again. Theoretically, they're breaching a condition when they get caught again. And it used to be that they would actually go and be held in custody. No longer are people being held in custody. So what happens is, for example, people who have area restrictions put on them there, after a short period of time, the courts lift those conditions and allow them to return. And that's what's really affecting us and our ability, because if they're there and they're just sitting there, there's not much we can do. If they're breaking the law, then we can certainly lay a charge. So we've done that. Unfortunately, the back end of our criminal justice system, obviously, I guess, it's not just my personal opinion. Pretty well, it's on the news every day. It's actually broken and it's not working. So deterrence and rehabilitation, there's no deterrent. And unfortunately, we're not being supported in that aspect. So whether the charge is laid and then if it's withdrawn by the Crowns, because there's a backlog of court cases at the court. So a lot of these cases are being withdrawn without police input, or conditions are being removed without police input. And there's really no input from the victims any longer, because it's generally, we're not seeing the interaction with victims that we used to see in years past. So sadly, we can't be there all the time. When we can, we have the law, we work within the law. And unfortunately, that's also is a kind of a hindrance to us as well. So it's a double-edged sword. But at the end of the day, we will continue to do enforcement. We will continue to go and do our job. And unfortunately, it's like chasing your tail, because we're chasing the same people around and around. They get arrested, they get conditions, the charges are withdrawn. We chase them around, they get arrested, there's conditions, the conditions are lifted. And there needs to be a real change in everything, so we can start getting back to the way it is, so people can feel safe in their own neighborhoods. So we'll continue doing it for as long as we have to. And it is frustrating for all the people. Certainly a lot of the phone calls I've fielded, people are frustrated. And that's why, we're seeing in the news every day how people are demanding bail reform at all levels. We have people with firearms, loaded firearms, that are being released the next day, and, coming to our community with guns. So if they're letting the person out with a loaded handgun who's trying to pull it on a police officer, then the person, smoking dope in the park, you can just imagine the difference, how far down the system they are. So, it's a real unfortunate time. It's frustrating for our officers, because we're the ones that are facing the victims on a daily basis. And the victims believe we're not doing anything. And the fact is, the police are doing everything they can, sometimes to the same people multiple times in a week. But the system, it needs a complete overhaul. It's so dysfunctional right now that it's members of the community that are being harmed and hurt. But that's not stopping our officers. And I applaud them for going out each day and facing it, from the accused who torment the police on the way to jail, saying, I'll be out in 5 minutes before you're done the paperwork. And then to the victim who's calling, going, why aren't you doing anything? So it's a really tough go right now. But the city of Kingston has stepped up to the plate with a number of initiatives, and we're certainly stepping up with them. It makes me proud to be a Kingstonian here. The short time I have been here, we will rally around with our community, and we will make it a safer place. And the new strategic plan is a good start as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, then I would ask for a motion to move in camera. Very good, Gail. Thank you, Jimmy. All in favor? Oh, what did I forget, Laurie?
10-minute recess for Jimmy.
We're gonna do 12.
Lovely.
Two for him.
Yeah, 12
All right.
minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.